tuned in here on my iPad. Welcome to Harp Talk. It is a gorgeous day here as well, Keith, in the Hudson Valley. It's really a most beautiful spring day. I went for a run earlier and just couldn't get enough of the blossom and the greenery that's just burst out. Feeling great here in Cold Spring, New York. Please let me know who you are. If this is your first time tuning into Harp Talk, if you're a returning member, thank you for being here. Thank you for your spending your Saturday with us, this online harping community. Today it feels like it's for a particularly good reason. All proceeds from the digital sheet music sales from today or donations will go directly towards Doctors Without Borders towards their COVID relief work in India. This is a cause really close to my heart. I've got family in India. I've got a lot of musical colleagues who are really facing dire circumstances over there. People are dropping like flies. It sounds crass to say, but it is true. So please consider donating. You can do it through the donation part of my website on the Harp Talk page section of my website, www.maevegilchristmusic.com, or you can just go to Doctors Without Borders or UNICEF. Those are two organizations that I think are really committed to spending the money in direct and effective ways for oxygen, for ventilators, for isolation rooms, and all the rest. So thank you for being here. And I'm going to see who is with us. Hi, Keith. Good to see you from Vancouver. Kim from South Carolina. Hello, Kim. We have Ellen. Hi, Ellen. Claudia, also Massachusetts. Hi, Claudia. Charlotte Smith-Jones. Hi, Charlotte. Carol in Western MA. Happy Birdathon and 125th anniversary to Mass Audubon. Oh, so big birding day today. Good to know. Wendy in New Zealand. Hi, Wendy. How's it over there? How's the weather in New Zealand right now? We've got Will in Pennsylvania. Thanks, Carol. Great. We've got Mallory. Hi, Mallory. Oh, lovely to see you all. I'm going to give folk a minute to kind of trickle in before we get started. And maybe while I do that, I'm just going to play a little music. I'm going to keep the tune Tilgosta, which I'm probably not pronouncing right. That's something I should have checked on. So don't take my word for the pronunciation. But let me just play a little bit of music while we're waiting. And then we'll get cracking on that tune. If you've got your harps there, have them handy. We're going to be doing some warm-ups together. I know there wasn't any technical focused handouts available, but we're going to be doing a little together during this hour, kind of focused towards the tune that we're learning. But maybe I'll play something new. This first tune isn't new. This first tune is on the Harp Weaver album. It's Chris Stout's Compliments to the Bonaccord Ale House. Mallory, I know you're working on this one, so I will send this out to you. But I'm going to go into a tune that I just wrote a couple of weeks ago called Red Rum. On the album, I go into this other piece with string quartet, and I was thinking about other options for when I'm not with the strings to make a set out of these two pieces. So you can all be my guinea pigs and let me know what you think. So, a little new tune called Red Rum. For anyone that just joined, that was not till Gosta. We're not going to be learning that today, but lovely to try out a new piece. Red Rum was a famous racehorse. I'm a big fan of the horses, so I was trying to manifest some of that forward drive in that tune there. Okay, let me see who we have now. I think it's the same. There's Evelyn, of course. Hi, Evelyn. Great. Okay, good to have everybody. We're going to start with a little arpeggio work. The tune that we'll be working on, Til Gosta, probably not the right pronunciation, is a really stunning melody from the great nyckelharpa player Olav Johansson from the band Vassen. When we work on it, I'm going to be talking a lot about tone, about sound, about projecting and phrasing. So to kind of get our hands ready for that, I thought we'd do a little of work with some suspended fourths and suspended second chords. I think we've done some of this work before, but perhaps you were there, maybe you weren't. Suspended chords in general are a really handy thing to know about. I utilize them all the time when I'm accompanying traditional tunes because they're a way to create a kind of soundscape, a harmonic base that's not imprinting a major or minor tonality on a thing. So it's got this lovely ambiguity about it. And for those of you who don't know what a suspended fourth chord is, we'll start with a suspended fourth and then move on to a suspended second. If you take a G triad, I'm in the key of G, so I've got my F sharps on. If you take a G triad, we have the root, the G, we have the third, the B, and we've got the fifth, the D. The most important harmonic bit of information out of those three notes is definitely the third. This is what determines whether the chord is major or minor. So we're going to take that away and play the fourth note of the scale instead. The fourth note meaning we're just counting up from the root G and finding the fourth note, which is C. So instead of having G, B, D, we have G, C, D. I find it more helpful to think in numbers than note names. This is going to make transposition much easier, and you're learning the shape rather than that specific G suspended chord. So root, in this case G, fourth note of the scale, in this case C, and then we've got the fifth, in this case D. Let's start by just playing that in various ranges. I'm using 3, 2, 1, G, C, D, finding another one, up high 2. Make sure all the notes are coming exactly together, and this is your opportunity to bring the thumb over and the fingers all the way in. The more times you can block it, the more your hand is learning the muscle memory. I'm going to do the same thing with my left hand, using my elbow to support me. I'm doing some inversions as well. When you've got that, we're going to create an arpeggio out of it. So we're going to start with the G below middle C, fourth finger on G, third finger on C, second finger on D, thumb on G. 4, 3, 2, 1, G, C, D, G. Just kind of squeeze the strings, feel that shape. You can see that now the root is outlined with the fourth finger, the third is on the fourth note of the scale C, the fifth note of the scale D, we have the second, and then our thumb is back on the root again. And we're going to swing from this position to having 3, 2, 1 on C, D, G. So that's just going to give us 2 whole octaves worth of the G suspended fourth chord. So for anyone just joining, we're talking about suspended fourth chords. This is our warm-up today. This does not sync up with a handout. This is just me doing some warm-ups with you. Suspended fourth chords. Feel free to ask questions at any point. If you've got your harp there, let's block the lower and upper shapes of this suspended fourth chord. This is tricky because we've got this wide interval between the fourth finger and the third, so it's really helpful for stretching out the hand. If you're someone whose hands want to be kind of closed, this will be particularly good for you. Hopping up, making sure we hear every string. And then when you're ready, we're just with the right hand now, we're going to separate those notes. get a flow going. You're listening for evenness. Make sure your tone is light. And that we don't hear the break as we move into the upper register. If you're a beginner player, you might be taking this very slowly. If you're a more advanced player, you can start to push the speed. And remember, every time we speed up, we lighten up. We utilize the core more in order to hold and support the hand and the fingers. I'm trying to make it sound and feel as effortless as possible. I'm playing with the dynamics. Per usual, I'm creating kind of a rainbow-shaped phrase. I'm leaning into the middle of that whole phrase, not the outer edges. You can hear the difference. If I lean into the low end, it sounds like this. If I lean into the high end, there's a brashness to it. Here's the kind of the hump phrasing again. Your arm, should just be kind of gliding like this. Let's try it with the left hand. For anyone that's new, I see we've got a couple of new folk. We're working on suspended fourth chords. A suspended fourth chord is simply when we take a triad and take away the third, that note that determines whether it's major or minor, and we replace it with the fourth of the scale. We're doing a G suspended fourth chord right now. So we're taking away the third that would be the B, and we're playing the C instead. So let's block up and down the octave again with the left hand. With the left hand, I really like to activate, engage this upper arm to support the lower arm. But when I do that, make sure that we're not tightening the shoulder. My core is also engaged. I'm going to block the notes exactly together. Listen to make sure you hear all of the notes evenly. Up the octave, down the octave. It's usually those inner voices that get lost, the third and the second. And then when you're ready, we start to separate, creating an even connected sound. We're going to change the shape to the suspended second chord now. So if we started with a G triad and altered it to create the suspended fourth chord, that was us taking away the third and playing the fourth instead. We could do the same, taking away the third, but play the second instead. So instead of GBD, our regular G major triad, it's going to be GAD, the root, the second degree of the scale, and the fifth degree of the scale. So let's first of all just find some of those shapes and play them all over the harp. GAD. Both hands. Make sure the notes are being played exactly together. If you're playing them like this, your hand isn't really learning the shape. It's not learning it as one blocked shape. So feel the strings before you play them, and it'll help you develop muscle memory for these chords. In this case, a G suspended second. Now we're going to create an arpeggio, which means we're simply extending the chord up into a higher range. We're going to finger the low G with our fourth finger, A with our third finger, D with our second finger, and our thumb is on G. We're with our left hands now. I'll say that again. Fourth finger on G, third finger on A, second finger on D, thumb on G. That's our first shape. My core is activated. My upper arm is supporting my lower arm. You can see that the back of my palm is just an extension of my forearm with the fingers dropping down and the thumb going up. Let's block that shape and then catch A, D, and G above it. 3, 2, 1, A, D, G. We'll block that. And then we're going to play the arpeggio up and down. Try and make it sound like water. For the more advanced player, you can use opportunities like this to start improvising with the right hand. Can you put on your metronome? Keep a consistent pulse. Okay, suspended seconds, suspended fourths. Let's do one more set of these changing keys. When we're learning shapes, it's so important to kind of shift your tonal center so that you can be sure that you're learning the shape and you're not just glued to one area of the harp. So let's change our harps to the key of F. Let's do something more exciting. Let's go to the key of B flat major. So I'm taking my F lever down, back into the neutral key of C. That's always my kind of neutral land. And then I'm going to move my B flats and E flats down into the key of B flat. Does anyone have any questions before we move on to a suspended fourth shape and a suspended second shape in the key of B flat? Any questions so far? Let me do a little check-in. So Wendy says it's getting chilly by my standards coming to autumn. Okay, so gradually getting cold, but not too bad, Wendy. Hi, Denise. Welcome. You played the harp outdoors this afternoon. A refreshing time. Lovely. Yeah, I hope I meet you in person now that you're probably vaxxed as well. We can finally do this. We'll have to have some kind of harp gathering, Hudson Valley harp gathering. Kim's asking, do you keep your fingering the same as you do those arpeggios? Do you mean, Kim, between the suspended second and suspended fourth chords? The answer is yes, if that's the case. When I'm doing the suspended fourth shape or the suspended second shape, I'm still fingering it between the two octaves, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. Does that answer your question? So we're in the key of B flat now. Let's work on a B flat suspended second. First step, especially if these chords are new shapes for you, is to work out, well, what's a regular B flat triad? It is, of course, B flat, D, and F. But if we take away the third, the thing that makes the chord major or minor, and play the second instead, we have this beautifully ambiguous way of playing. So let's first of all block our shape down the octave. Fourth finger on B flat, third on C, second finger on F, thumb on B flat. That's fourth on B flat, third on C, second on F, thumb on B flat. We'll play that. And then we hop up the octave to C, F, and B flat. C, F, and B flat. Let's move between these shapes. When I'm blocking like this, I feel this great energy in kind of floating up to the upper register and then falling back down. So just being aware of the gravity. And then we're going to separate the notes and create a connected arpeggio. Here we go. Feel free to do it a little slower. Feel free to speed it up. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. Right hand blocking F flat, B flat, C, F, and B flat. Up the octave, back down again. Let's separate. I'm looking at the comments and Will's saying my left shoulder is already put. Am I holding my arm up wrong, or am I just out of practice? Well, I'm not sure. Are you out of practice, Will? Left arm already pooped. What? This is kind of an abstract way of looking at it, but as you're playing, I really would try to kind of shift the weight. This is a thing of intention rather than any real physical movement. But what I find, this is usually, it's not for my arm as much as my fingers and wrist. When I find that my wrist and fingers are getting tired easily, I usually notice that actually I'm not supporting with my arm or with my core. So I wonder if you're over engaging your arms, and your shoulders certainly shouldn't be put. So maybe shake out, have a rest, and when you put your hand back, and maybe start by just working within the 1 octave will. Keep checking in as to whether your core is engaged, so that you're not just holding your elbow up with your arm and with your shoulder, but actually your core is helping support it as well. And just work within an octave. Keep checking in with the shoulder, with the other arm. See if you can relax it. See if you can hold the weight in different places. Can you actually lean a little bit more into the hand so it's not so much on your arm and shoulder? Can you sit up a little taller? But keep checking in with that shoulder, dropping it down. And take breaks, because if you've not been using the left hand, this will just take a while to work up as well. But it's great to work it up with intention and put all the right habits in place. Let's do the same thing with the right hand. B flat suspended 2nd chord. Here we go. You can play with dynamics. Little note, when you're playing with dynamics, when you get really quiet, make sure that you're not altering the tempo. It's really hard, especially if you're playing quickly, to maintain a steady, even tempo and get really quiet. If you're working with a metronome, that's something worth playing with. Louder, gradually getting softer. So keeping exactly the same speed, the same precision. And then start to grow. And so on. And same with the right hand, let's look at a B flat suspended 4th shape. Again, we find our regular B flat triad, we take away the 3rd and we play the 4th instead. Let's go up and down the arpeggios. For time's sake, I'm skipping over some steps right now, but let's move up this B flat suspended 4th chord. It feels so different because the spacing is so different. If you feel when you separate the notes, it's all over the place, go back to the blocking. It's always worth spending time on the blocking. As you move up, be sure to move away from the harp. Make sure that you're not crunching. Let's do the same thing with our left hand. Let's block a B flat suspended 4th chord. Here we go. Make it sound like a wheel, circular, never ending, and find that ease both physically and in the sound you create. Any questions regarding technique before we go on to our piece of the month, which I love? like there's any questions so far. I'm going to pull up my music so that I'm looking at the same score you are. For anyone who's new and hasn't done the handout thing before, if you'd like to purchase the music for this tune that I'm about to play, you can head over to my website, www.mavegilchristmusic.com/learn, and you'll see there's a handout section, and this is in the upcoming handout. So you can purchase that. And just a reminder, I'm going to say this a lot today, that any digital sheet music sales of this piece, Tilgosta, or any of the other ones, all week will be going towards Doctors Without Borders, towards their COVID relief effort in India. If you just want to donate, there's a donation button under Harp Talk as well. All of that will also go towards Indian COVID relief this week. You can also just head over to UNICEF, Doctors Without Borders, if you'd rather go direct. But thank you in advance for your generosity. It means so much to be able to utilize our harp community in helping this incredibly worthwhile cause. So this is a tune that I first heard by Olof Johansson from the Swedish band Vassen last Christmas. I think it's on there. They have a record, The Power of Three, I think it's called, and it's on that record. But it really struck me when I heard him playing it solo 2 Christmases ago. The pandemic year has just kind of disappeared in my mind. So it wasn't last year, it was 2 years ago. During our Christmas Celtic Sojourn series of concerts in December at the Cutler Majestic in Boston, which, by the way, will happen in some shape or form this coming year. But he would stand on that stage every night with his nyckelharpa and play this hauntingly beautiful tune that he wrote for his father. So I emailed to ask if I could have permission to make an arrangement and to teach it to you today. I'll just play it before we start to break it down. As you're listening, I'm really trying to utilize this melody to focus on tone and a connected melody, which, as we've talked about many times before, is really a tricky thing on the harp. We can't just assume that a melody sounds connected. We need to really create that connection via intention, tone, and dynamics. So that's something I'm going to be thinking about a lot. The tune spans a large range. So when I'm playing in the upper registers, I'm thinking about using my hands in a very different way than I am when I'm playing près de la table. That just means down close to the soundboard in the lower registers. And in the B section, I spend a lot of time down here kind of ringing out that sound, that very nylon-y sound of the close to the soundboard plucking. Okay, here's Tilgosta. Oh, side note, well, not really, it's why I taught the suspended fourth and second chords. The introduction here is using a suspended fourth chord on G and then a suspended second chord with a major 7 on C. So there is some connection, I promise. I just think it's such a beautiful melody. I know there are some different things going on there than the arrangement, but I'm going to go back to the arrangement now. It's always more difficult for me to play from arrangement than it is just to play something. Let me just see if there's any question. No questions. Okay, great. So I'm just going to start walking us through this piece, some things that I think are important to the playing of the piece. We're going to start in that B section where I'm going so far down. I shifted the key of this one because it felt either too high or too low, but I really wanted to utilize the close to the soundboard sound in the B section of this one. So I'm just looking on page 3. It's measure 30 for anyone who has the music. Anyone who doesn't have the music, feel free to go and get it, or feel free to ask questions so I can clarify further. Sorry, you're hearing my boyfriend Logan stomping around in the kitchen right now. So here's just the melody. When I'm playing it down close to the soundboard, I'm really trying to kind of ring the sound out. So you can hear it's not here. This is far down, but it's even further down. I'm feeling the soundboard kind of quite sharp into my wrist. Like I'm using the soundboard for support there. The left hand is also quite far down. I'm playing very little with the left hand because I think the tone close to the soundboard is kind of the winner of this section. So play with that. You have to use your body in a slightly different way. I'm hunching down much more than I do. So I want to be aware when I shift up to playing the B section higher up that I change my technique. I wouldn't recommend being down here for a long time, but I think it sounds so lovely, and it's such a kind of tonal contrast. So that was in that section, and you can hear the change when we go up. It blows wide open again. In those B sections, something I also wanted to talk about was the pickup notes. So I think, and I just learned this melody by ear from Olaf's playing, and if Olaf, for any reason you ever watched this Harp Talk, please jump in and make any corrections. I think probably the pickup is just a single note G. But I'm really using that as a moment to try and move along the melody. So I'll often add some ornamentation or add another melody note or two. Excuse me. So if I play it straight the first time, maybe I would do. Some of these are written in, some of them just play with. Every time you have that G pickup note, here, that's also a melodic variation. It's not just. So if you're looking at the music, this happens at the end of measure 31, there's a G. At the end of measure 33, I've got G and F. You can see in measure 37, I've intentionally written out that melodic variation. But the point of all these melodic variations is just to give more of a sense of momentum, of forward movement. And this is so often why and how we're using ornamentation. It's just to create an augmented version of what we're already feeling with the melody. But by playing with changing the melody ever so slightly, or by adding ornamentation, it gets your hands used to working in a way that's directly connected to the emotions that you're feeling in the music at that time. And that's a very exciting connection to hone and work on. Okay, I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm just going to go kind of through the arrangement, explaining some things. This is an example of a piece which I'm playing rhythmically quite elastically, but I'm always aware of the undercurrent of eighth notes going on, whether I choose to kind of pause or move on. I'm always aware of this. And actually, because I'm aware of it, I can take it a little slower. I can leave more breath, because I'm feeling that kind of framework beneath it. So before I even start playing, this is the introduction. That's worth making a loop of. I'm going to kind of recommend certain sections that I think you should loop until they feel very connected and smooth. That intro is one of them. Even though there's not many notes going on, I really want you to practice that counting, hearing and feeling all of the things that you're not playing. So we play the first 5 notes, 1, 2, 6, 7, 8. 6, 7, 8. 7, 8. It creates the ambience before even the melody comes in. And I think it makes that kind of breath and that kind of pause, that extended pause, or the extended series of pauses that I've worked into the arrangement, it makes them fly because there is this undercurrent of rhythm. So often we think of rhythmic playing as having to include fast tempos or very syncopated techniques, when really it's just this confidence of pulse and of subdivision of pulse and an awareness all the time of what you're playing and what you're not playing. That might sound a little abstract, so feel free to ask any questions. But I would work with that intro, just making it feel really good, finding the right touch right away. We don't want it to be too heavy. We don't want it to be too light, or it'll sound skatey. Sometimes I like to play harmonics in there as well. Here we go. That can be a lovely way to feel it, but hopefully you heard that there was a real consistent pulse. When we go into the melody, the way that I've arranged is so this piece, the form of it is A, A, B, B, A, A. The first 2 A's, I've got some really long phrases, and that comes from how I was hearing the melody, but how I've chosen to support the accompaniment of the melody as well. So if I look at the first 3 measures, starting at measure 5, or I'll play the pickups from measure 4, the melody is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I think of that as one phrase when we've got the left hand in it. So here's what I've written in the arrangement. I keep it going. So I'm going to do that one more time, and I'm pacing it. So the phrasing, the pacing, the dynamics are all interwoven together to really control the movement. of the phrases in a piece like this, I'm going to actually play it in a way that's exaggerating that forward momentum. I'm going to kind of rush it just so you can hear an exaggerated version. This was too much. This was too rushed, but I do want a kind of awareness of that forward feel. So think of that as one phrase. Take a pencil and just draw a big arrow over those measures and use that as a loop, so that especially that left hand is just one phrase, and it's actually quite tricky. Like there's quite a lot of fiddly movement there for a left hand. This is where your arpeggios will come in handy. I'm going to go on. First phrase one more time. Very tender. And then that's such a kind of emotional landing point. So if I'm leaning up to the B, I come down a little bit. A phrase begins again. End of phrase. So again, I created a huge phrase there. If you're looking at the music, it's going from well, the left hand is kind of starting in 10 with that. But the melody really starts from the pickup at the end of 10. And I've extended the phrase with that left hand pattern. So the melody phrase stops at the beginning of that measure, which is measure 12. But I hear it continuing on with the left hand. So be aware that your left hand is continuing the phrase. I'm very much hearing that left hand as a cello section. So connect that B 10th to the A 10th to the G 10th, and we finish the phrase. And we come down again. Stop here because I want to talk about fingering right there. In measure 15, if you're looking at measure 15, I've got this little syncopation in the left hand. It's really subtle, but it's just kind of shifting the movement there as well. If that 16th note is hard for you to count, subdivide further into 16th notes. The right hand in that melody, the right hand of that melody in measure 15 is. So I'm thinking 1 E and a 2 E. What am I thinking? 1 E and 2 E and a 3 E and 4 E and a 1 E and 2 E. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 16 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll base my syncopation off that subdivision. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. The more you can subdivide, the less likely you are to rush unintentionally or to drag unintentionally, and the more accurate your placement will be. So when you're working with rhythm, don't go on intention. Not intention, intuition. I'm getting mixed up. It's really easy to look at something and think that your musical intuition has got it. But with rhythmic stuff, actually do the math, work out the mechanics of it, and then let intuition take over. But it's a much more foolproof way to both work on your rhythmic core, strengthening your general musicianship, and nailing the arrangement. So subdivide. At the end of this phrase, I have this little pattern pattern, which is all accompaniment. Essentially, the accompaniment there is D, C, first inversion of a G chord, and then we're back into the A section again. And I love that movement. It's such a lovely kind of cadential movement. That wasn't me. That I heard that on the record. Roger Calroth, the guitar player who used to be in Bassin, that was one of the lines he played, and I loved it, so I picked it up there. Now, the fingering in the sheet music is having you reach up with your thumb. Oh, that wasn't right. Which I do sometimes. I double up on the thumb, super light, and then we go down to C. If you want, we can also play it with the right hand, the third and fourth note, where it goes to the treble clef in the lower stave. Right now it's fingered 1-1 in the left hand. We can play that with the right hand. That would go like this. So I would change the left hand fingering there to 2-1. I would play G and A with my right hand, softer because it's not the melody, it's an accompaniment note, or they're both accompaniment notes. And then hop back down to my left hand on the C, G, E. Grow the melody out of the left hand here. So that is a lovely concept. If the left hand is doing something busy or creating a texture of its own, can we give the impression of the melody kind of growing out of it? Oh, sorry. Let me try that again. Here we go. And then we're on. So the second time through the A section, a lot of similar harmony, but we're lower down. So I'm intentionally playing with register. If you're an arranger, I'm sure you do this as well. I liked the idea of starting this one very much in the upper register, particularly because of that, which I just love so much. But the second time through, I'm going into the lower register. Here, that's its own little melody. So starting in measure 19, there's a pickup at the end of measure 19. That's kind of one left hand phrase. You can see that actually I'm kind of sticking close through those all. I'm sticking close to the harp. I'm kind of anchoring with my second finger. If that feels at all awkward, I wouldn't do it. It's just kind of how my hand sits on the strings. But either way, I'm thinking very close, and I'm lightly landing on the downbeat that's attached to the upbeat that I'm playing. So all of these tenths are upbeats, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And I'm lightly landing on the downbeat, and it creates this very locked in relationship. It's not a splat, which I do a lot. It's not a full damp. We don't want all of the sound to go. It's just like a really gentle touching of the strings. And this kind of wide spectrum of touch, of gentle approach via aggressive approach, it can be applied to every aspect of our harp playing. The notes themselves, the damping, the lever changes, the resting of the hands. Ultimately, we want to control all of it. Have we got any questions so far before I go on to a couple of other things about this arrangement? Let's see. Laurie Fuller is asking, what level do you consider this arrangement? I feel like I always kind of roughly say intermediate. I'm not a huge fan of labeling levels. I know it can be really helpful to get a sense of whether it might be applicable to you and whether you'll be able to play it. But what I would say to everybody is, if you really love something, if something is speaking to you, find a way to play it. Laurie, I'm not sure what level you are. If you feel like what you've heard so far, this might be a little bit above you, know that there's many ways to deconstruct. And if it would be helpful, and let me know in the comments, I'd be happy to show you some ways throughout this arrangement, some tricky parts that I might actually take away some notes. When you get used to deconstructing to your level, it forces you to have to hone in on what is the essence of the arrangement. What are the most important parts of harmonic information in there? What's the general shape? And how can I create that without any additional notes? How can I create that with the maximum kind of fuss? Without the maximum fuss, with the least amount of fuss. So this is actually a really wonderful exercise to get used to doing on your own anyway. What do I have to take away in order to create this fluidity, this connection? Because that's really what I think is so beautiful about this piece. It's really not the arrangement. That, every time I play this piece, it's going to be a different arrangement, but the melody is stunning. So how can we use what we've got to frame and present this melody in a new light? Let's see. Laurie is saying, when do you stop the PDLT? Let me pull up the arrangement again, Laurie. So I would go, let's see, 36. I mean, like, anytime you're kind of above middle C, I'm gradually moving up. I'm often not going from here to suddenly going to the top of the strings. Like, if I'm looking at the music in measure 36, the melody is coming up anyway. So naturally, I'm going to be moving from this very low area, where, by the way, we're using the Près de la Table because it makes the melody cut. I didn't say that earlier, but it's also just, it's practical. It makes the melody project in a way that it doesn't in this muddy lower mid area in the harp. But as I'm coming up with that melody line, I would gradually be coming up on the strings. And now I'm back in the middle of the harp. And I'm ready to go up the octave. I could sit here and play that melody all day. I love it so much. Would it be helpful actually for anybody else to do some deconstruction? I could talk about actually adding more. I'd love to talk about some places that I ornament, some place that I occasionally do a trill, which I'd like to share with you. But would anyone like me to actually break it down further and take some of those more difficult moments and make them more accessible? Perhaps that is a good thing to do. Let me check in with the comments. There's always a bit of a delay here. Yes. Okay, great. That's all I needed. Wonderful. So honestly, I think the first thing, Laurie, and anyone else that this is applicable to, that I would do is instead of working on this kind of new area of playing Près de la Table, I think I would actually learn that whole B section up the octave first. If you still really want that lower sound, first of all, try it not close to the soundboard. Try it in the middle of the strings. You might have to muffle more notes to get that clarity, but it'll still sound nice. is just getting the melody in your hands before you're starting to go up or down. I would also say bass notes are often a really safe way to outline a harmony in the way that I intended and without playing some of the other notes. So like in that B part, starting by just playing the bass note, C to A. If you want, you can then add in fifths. When it goes to the repeat of the B section in measure 38, I open up to the tenths. If that's difficult for you, you can stick to the fifths. You could play octaves and gradually allow your hand to open up to tenths. That's one thing I would certainly do. If I'm going back to the first page, let me see. Well, that whole big kind of long line starting at measure 5. Here I'm going under to my second finger. I think first stop, I would just say stop on the G. So get that 4-3-2-1 movement on measure 5 in the left hand. But don't go up yet. Just get used to playing that first. Maybe I would just play the first 3 notes of measure 6. That still gives us that lovely G chord, the first inversion of the G and the sense of the D. So when we're deconstructing, you're looking at what's there and trying to think about why it's there. The reason I've got such an extended left hand line is so that we can keep the momentum through the melody and then have this lovely sense of rest when we get to that chord in measure 8. So you can create that in different ways with less movement, taking away some of the passing tones just meaning the between tones. So you've got the chord tones that outline the chords, and then often we just have passing tones. Take them away. Another place that I would do that is in measure 16 and 17, where we have this quite busy. Really, all those 2 measures need is D, and then C, and then B, and the A. Or you could do the first 2 notes of every chord, so that would be D and A, 1 and 2, and C and G, B and G, A and E. And that's it. That would sound beautiful, I think. Feeling the other notes that you're not playing. Same, any of the kind of upper notes in this part that begins on 19. If the tenths are too wide, try thirds. That'll still give us that lovely counter melody without having to stretch the hand so much. Does that give you some ideas? I'm looking to see if there's any other really tricky parts, but I think those are probably the trickiest. And this is just a general comment. I might actually change as I get to know this melody better. I think I might play with measure 44, 45, and 46. The left hand, when it goes into the treble clef there, I was just trying to create this kind of forward sense of momentum, but I think I might do it differently. Let's see. I'm moving up. No, sorry. I do love this sense of up, but I'm not sure these are the perfect notes yet. What's important to me in that part, and I would encourage you to play with it yourself, is that we're trying to create this lift so that when we come back to the melody, it feels like it's got gravitas. We're leading up to it, and then it lands. Any questions regarding those suggestions, Evelyn, Laurie, and anybody else? I want to talk about the trill. I know we're going over time. Thank you for staying late. Let's see. Oh, well, thank you, Wendy. I just love the amount of colors that can be created by this instrument. I think it's underexplored. I think we're just starting to dip into what it can do, and the reason that I'm so excited about the different sounds, colors, textures is because I think they can increase the emotional value of every note that we play. So that's really what's behind it all. It's what's behind all of these exercises, all of the warm-up. It's behind this kind of textural exploration and tonal exploration. It's just to try and get the most heightened emotional experience that we can. The last thing that I'm going to do today is go over this trill. So for anyone who's a slightly more advanced player, oh no, I don't do there. Well, I might do there. I just love putting in that trill. I think maybe Olav did that, or either way, it feels good in the hand. And that's a moment where I'm taking slight rhythmic elasticity. I'm going from this ja, ga, ja, ga, ja, ga, ja. But it's actually, it sounds like it's really elastic, but it's only ever so slightly coming in just after where the pulse would be laid. So where that happens is measure, it can happen in a number of places, but right there, I played it in measure 9, it would have been on that A. So instead of playing what was written in measure 9, on this second A, the 8th note, I start to create a trill. And I end up falling down. We want that trill to sound so easy, and there's got to be this kind of dynamic tail. So it kind of, it rears, and then it softens. And that's a part that I would just take out of the arrangement and practice separately. It's so lovely because it ends on the 4 chord as well. Let's just finish. I'm going to play it one more time. And while I'm doing this, feel free to write any more questions, and then we'll say our goodbyes. I'm not going to use the music this time. I'm just going to play. All right, everybody. Our next Harp Talk is June 26th. June 26th, and that's probably going to be the last one before the summer takes over for a few months. So please let me know what you would like to cover in that Harp Talk. And again, please consider heading over to my website, www.maevegilchristmusic.com, and purchasing any of the digital handouts, not the published music, the digital handouts. Any of those that get purchased this week, the money is going directly towards the Doctors Without Borders and their COVID relief efforts in India right now. You can also donate directly to them, or you can donate in the Harp Talk section of my website. Again, that's all going directly to them. Thank you so much for being here. Let me see if there's any questions before we head off. Evelyn's asking, when you write down an arrangement, is it just a snapshot of what you're doing at the moment, or are you writing for other people to play? I think, Evelyn, I'm kind of writing for other people to play. Like, you guys know this. I mean, most of you are regulars. I'd much rather that you take these arrangements and use them as a vehicle to make it your own. I think in general, as a group, harp players are much too glued to the arrangements on paper. And it's one of the only instrumental groups in folk music that this is the case. Most other instruments are learning by ear and then building their own, creating a kind of arc, utilizing ornamentation, melodic variation, all that kind of thing. And while arrangements are a wonderful way to learn shapes and to learn colors, different harmony and stuff, I would encourage you all to be using it en route to creating your own thing. So I think when I'm writing these down, I'm trying to think about the general feeling that I would want to give with this piece, and perhaps the kind of emotional arc, and then create a version based on those things. But feel free to change anything. This is not something that I feel is mine in any way. Thank you, Charlotte. Great to have you here. And you, Kim, thank you. Claudia, Will, great to kind of virtually see all of you. It always makes my Saturday to see names that I know at this point. I'll see you in a month. be in touch. Let me know what you'd like to do, and have a wonderful summer.